Now, if you've been here recently, you know that we're on a new section of a complete series which began with 5 talks on hope. Okay, we just finished 5 talks on trust, and last week we moved into the first of 5 talks about truth and faith. And from there we go into gratitude and then surrender. And I shall deliver those talks, but that's not all I'll do. Because the thing is, my job isn't what people might think it is. My job is to live from a place of knowing that there is a divine hand, a divine mind, an all-powerful force of divine love in back of all that is. All the time, all the things, all the beings, all the life, and all the events and circumstances happening in our lives and our world, regardless of how it may appear. God's always in it. And I really hope that that's the place, all this babbling I do up here, I hope that's the place that you're brought to. It does nobody any good to come here and sit in a hard pew because, let's face it, they're not comfortable, right? They're a little rough. They could be a little cushier. I have had my Fanny fall asleep on more than one occasion on these very pews through the last, we're not going to count how many years, but there have been many. But see, there's no point in you coming here and listening to me if I'm not giving you the tools that you need to grow and glow, right? Because we really are the light of the world. Each one of us is a spark of divine love. But see, the thing is, most of us don't realize it. And even when we do, we often forget that everyone else is that light too. Everyone. No exceptions. In our readings this morning from the apocryphal Gospel of Thomas, and when I say apocryphal, okay, what it means is that that book or that quote is not included in the canonical text of the Bible. And sometimes, if you read through the Apocrypha, I've only read 120 books of the Apocrypha. Sounds like a lot, but some of them are only a couple of pages, so it is what it is. Sometimes those books were left out because they're very redundant. If you compare the Gospels of the New Testament, you find echoes upon echoes. Well, you'll find even more of them in the Apocrypha. But others were left out because they didn't follow what was happening politically, what was happening socially at the time that those texts were assembled into the Bible as we know it today, which, you know what, I could go on for a while on that, and I'm not going to, because I have a great many thoughts. But you're not here for that. You're here for truth, right? That's what we're focusing on. So, the Gospel of Thomas is considered by theologians to be kind of an accounting of quotes that Jesus said. It's a list after list after list. This is what he said. This is what he did. And here is the last part of that reading that Adolfo gave us earlier. And it goes like this. Jesus saw some nursing babies. He said to his disciples, "These nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom." They asked him, "Will we enter the kingdom as babies?" Jesus said, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, when you make male and female into a single one, so that male is not male, nor female is female, when you make eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you will enter the kingdom." And here's how I interpret that. When you make the two into one, that means that when you see yourself as you are. One part of a whole, which is made up of everything that is. When you make the outer like the inner, when you demonstrate outwardly that truth that you know within, the upper like the lower says that everyone, again, without exception, is exactly as important as you. All that is exactly as important as you. None are more important or less. There is no class or hierarchy. And when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that male is not male, nor female is female, that says that gender is in no way related to worth or value. We must recognize that we are all equal in every way. Anatomy and gender expression have nothing to do with anything that matters, because the only thing that matters is the truth that we are one. When you make eyes in place of an eye, that means when you stop seeing only yourself and only those you wish to see, and you begin to see all people with all of their great many beautiful eyes as an extension of yourself. A hand in place of a hand. When we join hands in friendship and caring, a foot in place of a foot, when we walk together as one with one singular purpose, that of expressing that Christ consciousness as ourselves. An image in place of an image. That means when we all share a vision so clearly, so perfectly, that it appears through our belief and intention, then we will enter the kingdom. And that is absolutely the truth, unequivocally. Like that golden rule that we looked at last week, the concepts in this passage have been expressed throughout the millennia. Galatians 3:28 is, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. And 1 John 4:7-8. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. If God is love, then every merging of opposites, every healing of separation is a movement back toward God. To make the two into one is to return to love. It is to remember who we are. This isn't just one religion's truth. This is humanity's echo. It's the same note played in different tongues, each pointing us back to the oneness of love. For instance, from the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 29, he who sees the self in all beings and all beings in the self never turns away from it. This mirrors almost exactly when you see all eyes in place of your own. When we begin to see from the heart, instead of through that lens of separation, we recognize the self, which is to say, we recognize the divine in every living being. How about this? From the Hindu Chandogya Upanishad. As rivers flowing east and west merge in the sea and become one, with it, forgetting they were separate rivers, so do all creatures lose their separateness when they merge at last into pure being. Or this from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 28, know the male, yet keep to the female. Be like a valley to the world. Become the stream of the universe, and you will return to the state of the uncarved block. The Tao is the Taoist name for spirit, for God, flows through apparent opposites. Male, female, inner, outer, strong, soft. This is saying, be strong, but always act through love and nurturing. Jesus' teaching in the Gospel of Thomas mirrors Lao Tzu, that's who wrote the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu's wisdom is echoed perfectly, that to return to wholeness, one must unite dualities within the self. From that union, divine simplicity is born. And it really is simple. It just sounds so complicated. From the Buddhist Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, with no eye, no ear, no nose, no old age and death, no end to old age and death. This directly parallels make eyes in place of an eye and the transcendence of form. In the Mahayana teachings, enlightenment arises when we see through the illusion of separateness. The sutra collapses opposites, revealing the truth of non-duality. And I think that of all the many ways this truth has been expressed, Sufi mystic and poet Rumi may have said it most beautifully. And here are just two of the many. The first is, I searched for God and found only myself. I searched for myself and found only God. And here's my most favorite, and I think most of us are familiar with this. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. This is the kingdom, the space beyond labels and barriers, beyond male and female, upper and lower, inner and outer. It's the field of love, where all things are reconciled as one. Some really big thoughts landed in my head early last week, and I've been kind of letting them wander around in there, just inviting insight. And I believe I may have found at least some. I'm sure that at least a handful of y'all are familiar with the film Koyaanisqatsi. Okay, it came out when I was 7, and I remember feeling upset by it, but not understanding why. It felt like a nightmare, and it is, because Koyaanisqatsi isn't just a film. It is a Hopi prophecy. For generations, the Hopi people have spoken of great world ages, cycles of life, collapse, and rebirth. 4 cycles in total. Each cycle is a chance for humanity to live in harmony with the earth and with one another. And each cycle has ended when that balance was lost. The first world was Tokpela, meaning endless space. Here, humanity was pure, connected to the Creator, but people grew arrogant and forgot their oneness with life. The world was destroyed by fire. The second world was Tokpa, dark midnight. A new chance was given, but again, humanity turned away from the sacred, and that world was destroyed by ice. The third world was called Kuskurza, the lost world. There, technologies emerged, cities grew, people separated themselves by class, power, and pride. That world was destroyed by a flood. The fourth world, Tu'uwanasabi, the world we are in now. This world began with a promise that we would walk in harmony with the earth, but once again, we're forgetting. And so according to the prophecy, we are in danger, not because of some kind of divine punishment, but because of our choices. We live in a time of Koyaanisqatsi, means a life out of balance. And the prophecy says that for this fourth world, there are 2 possible outcomes. One, The imbalance would tip past a point of potential rebalance, and the blue star Kachina, Sasquatch, she would appear, signaling the end of the fourth world, and the beginning of the fifth. But there's another outcome that the elders say. When the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people will come to the earth from many colors, creeds, and classes, and who by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow. And I don't know why that's choking me up, but it really, really is. Notice that they did not say that this change would happen through war. They said it would happen through remembering. This isn't the end, it's a threshold. The fourth world does not need to end in destruction. It can become the first world of remembrance, but only if we return to the balance of love between one another, between us and the earth, between us and all that is, and also the balance of love within and about ourselves. And I have spent many hours this week opening myself to divine wisdom and clarity around this idea so that I could hope to see the path to our remembering. And I think I found one of, I'm sure, countless others, but one which we can all do. One which we can all use to shift that tipping point back toward harmony. If you look outside the window there, you will notice that it's a lot different from last week. And that's because a few of us, Jorge Perez, who does all kinds of incredible things around here, David Lacey, where'd you go? David over there, Adolfo, our presider, Mona Ross, my alto right there, our administrator, Amalia, and our board president, Ulf Israelson, and we have been working really hard this week to safely dig up and prepare the shrubs that used to line that whole front of that open land and the whole angle from that. We worked really, really hard to carefully dig them up and transplant them into grow pots. And if you look outside the window, back that way, you'll see a bunch of them in these big cloth pots. They're prepared to go into new soil, and we followed some very, very specific guidelines a friend of mine gave us for doing that. By the end of next week, the ground will be leveled, and we can start laying everything out for our labyrinth. Yeah. On the second day that we were working there, a car pulled in, and the man who got out of the car kind of took a few steps forward. He parked over here. He took a few steps forward, and then he kind of paused and looked a little lost. So I said, "Can I help you find something?" He said, "I am here to do an animal show for the kids." So I went, ooh, that's my first response anytime someone says animals of any kind. And then I said, "I'll show you where to go." So I headed over. The summer program is all meeting in the middle school. So I kind of walked him over and showed him where he was going. And then I headed over there and let them know he was coming so they didn't freak out when a car pulled through all the cones and pulled right up. And of course, I made a pest out of myself. And I made sure that I got to help him unload, so I got to see all of the very cool, there's like really cuddly and cute and some creepy crawly and some Slytherin creatures, and I will tell you all about them later because they have no bearing on this story, but they were really neat. So, ask me if you want to know. But after I helped unload all of these creatures, it gave me so much joy, I'll tell you. I got out of their hair pretty quick. But as I'm walking back, I saw our our maintenance engineer. What would we call him? What's the title for Ron? Ron Anderson has been here forever, almost 20 years, I think, at this point. And he's standing in the courtyard there, like this. And both of the doors on the fireside room are wide open. And I went up, I'm like, what's going on? Because he looked flummoxed, right? He looked like, ugh. So I said, what's happening here? And he said, a bird flew in there and I can't get him out. He says, look, if you look, he's sitting right there on the piano. And I could see it. There's this little bird sitting on the piano right in line of the door, and this bird refused to go out the door. And he said, I'm afraid that if I go in there, I'm going to scare him again and he'll kill himself, flying into the windows. And I, of course, said, I'll get him. And so I walked in, and the bird was fine. And then he followed me, and the bird was not fine. And the bird immediately flew into, there's the whole side of the fireside room is sliding glass doors. And the bird flew into the sliding glass door, not hard. And then it landed on the row of cabinets that's there. And I kind of froze. And I looked, and it kind of paid attention to us standing there. Ron had vacated. Ron was outside watching at this point. And the bird kind of looked at us and then hopped down. And I was afraid to approach. I was afraid that if I walked up, I'd startle it again and it would hurt itself. And then I started thinking at it. Okay, do you know what I mean by that? I started thinking all the things that I'd like to say if I was sure it wouldn't be afraid. My first thought was, please be okay. Because I was afraid it had knocked itself a little silly, banging against the window. And my next thought was, you're safe with me. I just want to help you. And I took a deep breath and I slowly began to approach. And as I got closer, I could see beyond the cabinets, I could see that Lloyd, my peacock, if you know, you know, right? He and Trudy, who is the female that showed up on the porch a couple of months ago, remember she had an injured leg and she kind of hung out there for a while. They were both outside that window, facing this way. And when I got up to the cabinet and I looked over, I saw that little sparrow facing out, looking at my two feathered friends who are slowly approaching. And I thought, ooh, I hope they're not interested in eating this little one. But then they both stopped about like this close to the glass. They both stopped and laid down, facing the sparrow, and the little bird just watched them. And I said in my mind, I'm going to try and pick you up so you can be safe. Please don't be afraid. And I leaned over the cabinet and I stretched my arm down, and my arm wasn't long enough. So again, I said in my mind, please stay there. I'm not going to hurt you. And I climbed my whole self on top of the cabinets, and I put my whole arm with part of my shoulder down there, and I couldn't reach it, even still. So I stood up, and I kind of paused, because I didn't want to scare it, but I knew that I couldn't leave it there. I knew that if I did, it would get hurt. So I said out loud now, I'm going to move the cabinet so that I can reach you. You're okay. And I moved the cabinets, which isn't a graceful thing. It sounds like it wouldn't be too big a deal, but the thing is, it is a long row of individual cabinets, and every other cabinet is anchored to like a big countertop, like from a kitchen, with nails. And like I said, every other. So if you move the end, the ones that are not attached do this. So it takes some connoitering. It was loud and it was a little chaotic. And it's very bangy. And when I got him moved a foot or so away from the window, I peeked down and that sparrow was still standing there. It was standing there looking at the peacocks, and I still couldn't get to it because there was a big stack of chairs right there at the end of the cabinet. So I moved those, making even more noise. And then I started to step behind the cabinets, and I am so nervous at this point. I am nervous that I'm gonna reach out and I'm gonna startle it and it'll bang into that glass. So I'm moving really, really slowly. And I don't say a word anymore. I actually think I was holding my breath. I was so afraid that it was gonna get hurt. And when I reached down, I picked it up, and it didn't flap a wing. It didn't move, not a chirp, nothing. And I held it up and I looked at it. Yeah, it was frightened. It had its mouth open in alarm. I could see his little tongue in there. But it was quiet and still and just watching me. And I stroked its head and I told it once again, this time it out loud, "You're safe. I got you." That was a lot, wasn't it? Take your time and calm down. And I walked outside with it. At that point, it dawned on me that maybe petting its head wasn't welcome, but I did so anyhow. And so I walk outside, and I'm standing at kind of where that little planter is, and I open my hand, use this hand, I open my hand, and the sparrow stayed. It stood there and held on to my finger, and it looked at me, and it began to settle. And several minutes later, this bird stood there. And Amalia pulled up. She'd gone out to run some errands. She pulled up and began to approach, and she saw the bird, and her eyes got big. I told her what happened and that it was still just holding on to me. She came closer and whoosh, it flew away. There was nothing wrong with that bird. It chose to stay, and I was absolutely enchanted. I decided that Snow White is a verb because I Snow Whited that bird. And see, the thing is, it isn't the first time. It's only the most recent. But when I was home later that day, I thought about it more deeply, and I brought those thoughts in with me on Wednesday night in that conversation service we have. And those of you who are here, you'll know that. And we talked through them all until I discovered some more clarity, because that bird was yet another divinely guided teacher for me and for all of us, because it taught me that there is a universal language which is understood everywhere. Now, most of you have probably already predicted what I'm going to say next, and you'd be partially wrong. Yes, the language that is understood and understood everywhere is love, but it's more specific. Okay, how many of you have had at some point in your life animals that you bonded with? Yeah? Okay, can you think of a time when you imagine those animals, can you think of a time when you felt a message or an emotion was shared between you? Did you feel like you knew that animal loved you? If you said yes, then you speak the language and you understand it fluently. You saw that animal look at you, you saw it seek your touch, and you heard its thought of, gosh, I love you. You heard and you responded Do you remember that Rumi line that I quoted earlier? Okay, here's the rest of it. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. The universal language is intention. The language is truth. The language is divine love, and that is different than love as we humans think of it. We think love is demonstration and emotion, but it is so very much more. On page 608, and this is from the glossary of the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, he says, love is the self-givingness of spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. Emerson tells us that love is a synonym for God. We are also told in the New Testament that he that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Love is free from condemnation, even as it is free from fear. Love is a cosmic force whose sweep is irresistible. So what is your intention of love? What is your divine expression? It is seeing everyone as they are, not as they appear to be. A Course in Miracles tells us that anything which is not love is fear. The belligerent person, that belligerence is fear. Okay, I'm going to use the kids' definition here. So if this is your name, please understand that this is not personal. But the Karen or the Kevin, right? Their insistence and their entitlement is fear. The person who complains or whines or acts like a martyr, all of those are fear. The rage-filled bully, yes, even that is fear. So how do we meet those expressions of fear? How do we meet those expressions or any other? We meet them with truth. But what is that truth? How do we express it? How do we express the truth that love is the only real thing there is? We live it. We embody it. We speak its language with our presence, not just our words. The truth isn't a doctrine. It isn't a dogma. It isn't even a feeling. The truth is this: you are love in form, and so is everyone else. You are a divine emanation of the One, here to be a reminder to those who have forgotten. That's it. That's the whole job description. So when you leave here today, I'm asking you to do something. It's not something grand or heavy. I'm asking you to become a sanctuary wherever you go, in your home, in the grocery store, online, at the light, when someone cuts you off, when you see fear dressed up as anger or arrogance or despair. I want you to remember and tell them in your heart and mind. You don't have to approach them, just tell them in your heart and mind, I see you. I see the real you, and you are beautiful. You are sacred. You are love in form, because again, that is the truth. It is their truth and yours. Remember who you are. And then silently and clearly, with the stillness of the little sparrow and the gentleness of the outstretched hand, speak love with your presence. And because you've done that, maybe someone won't believe the voice of fear that once drove them. Maybe they'll breathe again. Maybe they'll settle. Maybe like that little sparrow we thought was wounded, they will fly. This week, speak the language of love, not just with your lips, but with your life. Because when enough of us do that, consistently, courageously, quietly, the world doesn't end. It begins again. Have faith and know that you are that beginning. If you are willing to make the choice to fulfill this calling, I'd like you to join me in the responsive prayer that's in your programs, and I will lead you respond. When the world forgets itself, when fear wears the mask of anger, when we are tempted to turn away, when we look at another and feel separation, when we see a stranger or a wounded soul or a world in pain, everyone together, we remember who we are. We remember who they are. We remember love. And we walk in it, now and always. Amen.
Like a painted sky, a canvas in disguise. Pink moon rises up with the tide, provides such a lovely contrast to the lavender twilight. Like a child I'm mesmerized every time. Oh, the big picture makes me feel so small. The big picture makes me feel so small. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so. One day you're here, the next you're gone. The truth is that you're one with it all. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so. So small. Like a monarch flies southbound in July. She's headed down to Mexico with 1,000 miles behind her and 1,000 more to go. Oh, ooh. That's a strength I want to know. Oh, 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 the big picture makes me feel so small. The big picture makes me feel so small. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so wow. One day you're here, the next you're gone. The truth is that you're one with it all. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so. You can point your finger on the map and take a trip, or you can bask in your reflection's magnificence. There's beauty's everywhere if you choose to see it, and happiness is free. You've just got to be it. Ooh, you just got to be it. picture makes me feel so small. The big picture makes me feel so small. Ha. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so wow. The day you're here, the next you're gone. The truth is that you're one with it all. The big picture makes me feel so small. You know it makes me feel so small. But yet so large at the same time. Thank you.